This week in comic books, Joker #7 comes out, and it's about everybody but Joker. But hey, at least he was mentioned in it, right? I mean, it's other than just the title. Over in the land of Marvels, if you don't really understand the backstory to Thanos, Eternals is a good place to start. It actually catches you up and gives you some more insight about the Eternals, because a movie's coming out. Over in the land of Indies, Primordial, super sophisticated, big brain book that likes to play with history, and I actually have nothing smart ass to say about it. So let's roll the intro and jump into this week's haul and review. Hey, what's going on, you wonderful weirdos? I'm Pocan Joe, and as always, you're super cool for swinging by. Love having you here. This is my weekly haul and review. I've read a bunch of comic books, took some notes, and I got things to say about them. So let's jump into it with DC. Small haul this week. Didn't really see a lot that I was interested in. So we'll start off with Joker #7. So as the title would insinuate, you'd think this would be about the Joker, or you would at least see the Joker. They talked about the Joker, kind of, but really in this, we just found out that Alfred had, Alfred the butler, Pennyworth, his daughter's in here. She's doing something. The Batman female, spoiler, the other one, and Oracle, they had a major role in all this. Some lady that works for Interpol, we're going to call him Madame Halloween. I think that's an old-timey character, too. I'm not sure. If you know, comment down below. I keep feeling like that's a Golden Age, early Silver Age character. But I could be wrong. I need to do more research on that. She's selfish, right? And Bane's daughter. Jim Gordon showed up. And, it seemed to be focused on all of them. And whatever their issues are this week. So it was boring. It was legit boring. It was like, maybe there was one action scene where like the Batgirls fought a Talon type character. That was about it. And then the rest of it was just yawn. And I was like, I'm not very interested in this. Cool cover though, I'll give you that. The punchline story in the back is still cartoony and campy, and I don't know why it's even a thing, to be honest with you. This series is really taken that steep downhill, and since I don't cover by, this is probably very well my last issue. And unless something, I get wind of something interesting happening. Sorry. All right, next, Justice League, #67. So this is interesting. So we get the whole Samara thing, and in this one we deal with two philosophical points, or even ethical points in this one, I should say. So Samara comes down, and they blast him off into the Phantom Zone, right? And this, Superman has a problem with this, right? This kind of deals with that whole, if you can, should. Just because you're able to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you have the right to do it. And banishing somebody to a place like the Phantom Zone doesn't sit comfortable with Superman, but, does the end justify the means here, right? Everybody's safe, yada, yada, yada. What's the worst that could happen? Well, he's not dead, and as we know, people come back from the Phantom Zone all the time for whatever reason. And Samara is a very powerful creature. But for right now, right, it was taken, but this still weighs on Superman to stick this character there without really understanding its motives or anything along those lines. Another thing that comes up is this United Planets. I generally have a problem with people that form a group and feel that they have some sort of authority over other people, and that's definitely something that the United Planets do in here when they try to confiscate the Phantom Zone projector from the whole Justice League there. They're not down with this, but they believe that their authority allows them to do it. But the truth is that the whole concept of authority over other people is an illusion to begin with. So do the ends justify the means in this category? If they have it, will it be safer? Will they use it as a weapon against other people? These are all questions that one can sit and ponder. And it's kind of cool that Justice League kind of taps into this a little bit and lets us kind of deep dive into it ourselves. So good read. Definitely a good read. Not a huge fan of the particular art in this issue. But for the most part, I try not to judge art. I just know what I like, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that was definitely a keeper. Next, Super Sons. So Super Sons did something interesting. They decided to make this whole issue a flashback issue back to when the Super Sons were in medieval times, and Rora was helping them escape, and gave us a whole kind of a really just filling in plot holes up to this point. So you can't really say too much. And it was done in a very campy, cartoony type style of art. And the story's pretty one-dimensional. I mean, it is what it is, right? She helped to better humanity in the future and to learn what it would be to be a hero. And Vandal Savage and Phallus, of course, they're not buying that. But we also understand where they get the scroll that lets them know what superhero's next. Now, we do know that they're next on this scroll thing to die, and they have to help each other without letting the other one know. How does that work out? That's really what I was kind of hoping to get in this issue. Could have just skipped over this issue and just threw it all into magical woo-woo and just continued on with the story. This wasn't really necessary to the story. Going into Marvel, very small haul this week. Moving into Marvel, we have Eternals, Thanos Rises. So if you're not familiar with the backstory of Thanos and what his tie-in is to the whole Eternals thing, he's born from the Eternals, and his birth was actually an experiment, a failed experiment at that. So what led up to that with the Eternals? Why can't they have kids? Why was this particular kid, allowed in their little Eternals group family thing there? It's definitely interesting. Again, if you're not familiar with that particular story, it doesn't deviate too far from what we already know of Thanos' origin in this. So for the most part, it's an okay read, especially if you're deciding if you want to see the Eternals movie and what that whole relation is with the Snap and the Eternals and why that's relevant. This might be a good issue for you, but for the most part, for most comic book people that have been collecting for a while, you'd probably blow over this entire storyline. Moving on, Kang number 2. So, Kang goes back in time to battle Kang because of Kang. It gets complicated, right? You're dealing with time and jumping around, right? So, Ramatat in this, which is Kang. This is ancient Egypt. We do get a kind of a first appearance, I would guess, of because we know there's been multiples, of a Moon Knight type character in this, and the death of it as well. And how in ancient Egypt, the whole Kang and Khonshu, right, the Moon Knight god, what the relationship is there. They were enemies, they battled each other, right? That was interesting, but this can get complicated. You can lose valuable pieces of the story because you're trying to figure out at what point in time is this a thing and what point in time is this, right? It's a time variant type thing. And since we're playing off of that, coming off the show of Loki, the word variant, time variant gets thrown around everywhere. So yeah, you're kind of dealing with that in this. Our hero Kang, if you will, kind of has an Iron Man type suit in here, again, because he's from a future alternate multiverse world woo-woo science thing that doesn't make sense to begin with. So your best bet is, if you like time traveling stories and you kind of like seeing characters in ancient Egypt do things, like Apocalypse is in here, right? There was a battle between him and Kang had an issue at one point, right? And they're going to battle it out. And the young Kang that we're following the storyline of kind of wants to team up with him to beat, the Kang, the bad Kang. I'm going to say Kang at least 12 more times describing the story. Awkward. Just saying. So, yeah. And the next issue kind of promises a Doom type of tie-in as well. So we'll see where that goes. Let's see here. Going into Indies. Very small haul this week. Shepherd. So this is intriguing. Think of, you generally, I don't know how to describe this. So it just kind of takes place in a sort of kind of maybe purgatory. They haven't really completed it, completely told us yet. They're calling it the scene, right? The place in between. So purgatory for the most part. And apparently there's a family, grandfather, father, and son, that are kind of have a duty here, and it's kind of being explained in here, and they're trying to world build and tell a very heartfelt story, and it gets a little convoluted. Details kind of get muddled in this because you're You're trying to explain something with so much going on. So what happens in here is generally in this particular purgatory, heavy souls, things, tainted souls, if you will, that kind of have an issue and can't seem to move on, seem to reenact or relive moments of their lives in here. And in this particular one, which is very relevant even to today, was the Battle of Fallujah. If you're not familiar with it, it's back in 2008. Marines, the 5th Marine Group, had to go in door to door and kind of just clean out Fallujah because it was just riddled with every possible bad thing you could think of. And we know that there's a Marine that's kind of reliving this, but what we also find out is all these other Marines that are in there, because of his sadness, are kind of transformed into the Marines that kind of work there, but they're all soldiers and warriors throughout history. Rather they were with each other, against each other, it doesn't matter. They're all happen to kind of play a part in here. And at first glance, they're all Marines, but then when you kind of take the veil away, if you will, they're you can see where generation they're from. So that was kind of interesting. I like the concept of this. I just wish they did one issue or maybe a preview or an ash can beforehand kind of explaining why this world works the way that it does, and then kind of fed this story to us in an issue 1. It kind of spaced that out a little bit. You could have prolonged a lot of this. It would have been interesting, no doubt. But all in all, I liked it. As long as, it's a 2-reader. You might have to read it twice. God forbid, right? But it's not bad. Next, Primordial. So, I love it. I love good storytelling that kind of plays with a historical event and kind of turns it on its head and makes it into something else, right? It's fun and it's engaging, and it kind of takes things that and kind of looks at it in a different perspective. In this one, we're going to talk about 2 of the monkeys that the U.S. sent into, or tried to send into space. Unfortunately, it didn't make it, right? And then the Russians sending a dog up that also didn't survive. Well, this is saying basically, and this is what ended in this particular story, the space program's period, right? So it's kind of like an alternate to us. So they get shot up into space, and they don't die. They actually were captured, and a particular professor, scientist from MIT is starting to kind of uncover this. He's found the diagrams for the heartbeat, and there's, of course, secret agent stuff that's going on now because it's a cover-up where if you want to run deeper down the rabbit hole, go here, do this, and this guy's chasing it down. I like this story. The art in it, again, it's that real scratchy, weird, splashy kind of art I'm not really a fan of. Something like you would see in Department of Truth. It's a lot like Department of Truth. But, yeah, the story's great. I'm on board with the story. I would almost wish to just get this in a book and just read it that way, to be honest. But I'll chase this down. As long as my comic book store has it, I'll read it, and I'll review it. All right, last book. One of my favorites, and you've heard me talk about this book at least a dozen times yet. And if you haven't checked this book out, these comic books out, you can still go to Comixology and look up all this great stuff. And that Delta Dog 16 comes out, or 17. This was good. We get 3 stories happening simultaneously here before a major event. I don't want to spoil it, right? So the first one is our alpha dog. He has to kind of has to team up with the cops on this one, right? And then that's been kind of a point of interest in this story as you've been reading it. Young African American men kind of don't trust the police. The police are kind of showing that yeah, you can. It's not all of us. That kind of narrative. And I get where some people can be like, oh, I don't want to read that story. That's but I think this one is coming off genuine. It's not a forced narrative in here. It's coming off as a general thing, a more realistic, even in a very fantastic comic book. So I thought that was interesting. Second story is kind of like a gang on gang kind of thing going on here. Gang member killed a brother. Brother's like he's going to dust that fool. Come to find out, superpowers get involved, and things go crazy. And I love this character here on the front. He has a unique superpower. Definitely you got to read it. And the funny thing is, none of the powers are actually ever explained to you. in these comic books. There was some hints to in some of the earlier issues, but in the beginning, it was for you to kind of read and kind of get your aha moment of how these powers work. Speaking of powers working, the youngest one in here, whose powers don't always work when they're supposed to, we may be getting his big turn where his powers are actually activated. He's able to control them as he runs into a flaming building to save some people. His big conflict in here isn't so much his powers or anything like that. It was not being seen or being able to hang out because of his age with his older cousins who have these fantastic powers going off doing this stuff, and having an aunt to kind of help train him through it. So, very heartfelt story. I love the writing in here, and honestly, I just love the writer and everything that they do with it. So, definitely keep on the lookout for Delta Dogs. I very rarely, I do not get into a spec game. That is not my thing. But I'll tell you right now, this is an enjoyable book, and it is something that you can see animated on TV. Like, you can read it, and it doesn't come off as a script, and still enjoy it. I can't speak highly enough of this. I really can't. I may start charging them to say good. No, I'm joking. I wouldn't do that. But, yeah, definitely good stuff. So what's going on? Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube. We got myself, Spectacular Spider Grandpa, Huey. We're going to have a good old time over at Blast It or Stash It. Link in the description. We're going to have a live chat. We're going to talk about these books, some other books, and have a great time. And we want to invite you. So you're invited. You're officially invited. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Blast It or Stash It. Come hang out with us. We'd love to talk comic books with you. Huey Palooza is happening. Huey from Blast It or Stash It is going to be here in Virginia. As a matter of fact, he's going to be staying here in my evil castle. In my evil lair, above my evil lair, in the secret laboratory room. I don't know. He's staying here. We got a spare bedroom. He's gonna stay with us. So you know what that means? All kinds of weird content from all three of us the entire time that he's here. So that should be fun. We're going to a comic book swap. We're going to try to get some time out on a range. We're going to try to do some comic book hunting at various local comic book shops, maybe some antique stores. The world's largest antique comic our toy mall that we have here in Virginia, all kinds of stuff. So definitely, if you hit a notification bell, you won't miss out on the action. And the Evil Air project, that is done. That is done. And I'm editing the video still. I know I said that in my last video, but I'm still editing the video, trying to make it a little bit more understandable because we're kind of dealing with electronic and circuit boards in it, and I don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of nerd stuff. I'm just trying to streamline that video out and add some music to it. So that will be out, again, here real soon. And I hope you enjoy it. I really do. Other than that, my last video was a haul video. Definitely check that out. And I hope to see you around in the community. I got nothing else. Bye.